Hey everyone, Raz Games here, and today's video is a video I have been wanting to do for a while, but I'm just getting around to it today. We're going to be talking about player housing today, and more specifically, player housing in World of Warcraft. It has been officially announced. Player housing is coming in the Midnight expansion. It may even be coming in the Midnight pre-patch. I will link a video by Bellular in the description where he talks about how he does think that player housing is coming in the Midnight pre-patch, so I will link that in the description. Go watch his video. It's actually a really good roadmap to see what might be coming in the coming year and in Midnight, so definitely go watch that video. So what we're going to be talking about in this video is what exactly is player housing, how this may affect World of Warcraft, my experience with player housing, and WoW folks' opinions on player housing and my kind of commentary on that. So let's get into it. First, and super quick, high-level overview of player housing. What is player housing? Player housing can be different in most games, and it does vary, but in general, a player house is a place that your player returns to, can kind of chill, display your trophies, and it's just kind of your own personal customized space that your player can return to that is all your own. One other thing we're going to talk about later in this video that I forgot to mention is garrisons and why garrisons are not player housing, how they will never be player housing, so stay tuned for that later. But housing is not garrisons. We'll talk about that later, but that is generally what player housing is. It's your own personalized little space for your player to return to, and that is just kind of that. Now, different MMOs and different games have approached player housing in many different ways. There are some single player / co-op games like Palworld and Animal Crossing that also have a version of player housing, but I kind of want to talk specifically more about MMO specific housing. So that's kind of what we're going to focus on, is my experience with player housing in MMOs specifically. So my experience with player housing in MMORPGs is mostly Lord of the Rings Online and Runescape. I have played Final Fantasy XIV and I have visited the housing in Final Fantasy XIV, but I never had my own house, so I can't really speak a whole lot to what that is like. If any Final Fantasy XIV players want to leave comments about your experience with it and why you like it, what you don't like about it, definitely feel free. First off, the first housing I want to talk about is Lord of the Rings Online. There are different zones where you have different neighborhoods. So for example, on one server, my main player house is in the Elven lands. So it's called the Falathlorn Homesteads. All of these houses are elvish shaped. You have elven neighbors, you have elven vendors, and it's kind of in this beautiful kind of elvish area. You can also get player housing that is more race of man themed. So you can go there and the houses are like very rustic and all of the NPCs there are human. And then you can also have your own hobbit hole in Lord of the Rings Online. So you can also go to the homesteads in the Shire. This is where my kinship's house is. Kinship is the equivalent of a guild in World of Warcraft. So you can have your own hobbit hole if that is what you wish. And finally, for the main player housing, there is the dwarven area. It is all underground. I actually have a dwarven house because I think the dwarven housing area is so cool. I have a couple toons that are dwarves, but I don't really main them, but I just love the dwarven housing so much that is what I've decided to do. So basically how it works is once you reach level 15, you can purchase a house just with in-game money. It doesn't cost anything extra. There's no microtransactions involved or anything like that. You can just have it. You do have to pay an upkeep in Lord of the Rings Online. I don't know if this is the same in Final Fantasy XIV, but the reason for that is because player housing is pretty high in demand in Lord of the Rings Online, so if you don't keep paying your upkeep, your house will get sold and then it can go to another player. So that's the reason why they have that, and it's just kind of like another economy gold sink thing. So there is a possibility that World of Warcraft will do this, so just be aware, if you are looking forward to player housing in World of Warcraft, that there may be some sort of gold upkeep involved. And the gold upkeep does get more or less expensive depending on how big your house is. So in Lord of the Rings Online, I do have a large house for my player character, and that does cost me a lot more. And then it also can cost more if it's a more desirable location, like if it's by a lake or a waterfall, or if it's near the vendors or something like that. So if you are looking forward to housing in World of Warcraft, I imagine that Blizzard is going to introduce some kind of gold sink into this. The gold sink in Lord of the Rings Online is not terribly expensive. Even if I don't log into Lotro for a while, I am still able to keep up enough gold just by questing and doing other things to pay for the upkeep of my house. So it's not crazy expensive, but that is a thing that we will have to consider. Lord of the Rings Online also does premium housing. This does generally involve microtransactions. You can theoretically earn this premium housing through the game, but you would really need a VIP membership. VIP membership is just like the monthly membership. I don't think that's going to be a thing for Blizzard, because World of Warcraft, you have to have a membership in order to play World of Warcraft beyond level 20, whereas like Lord of the Rings Online has a much more robust free account where you can do a lot of free content in Lotro versus WoW. So yeah, this is just simply a thing in Lord of the Rings Online. But that being said, I have 3 houses in Lord of the Rings Online because that is how much I like player housing. I am a VIP. I do pay monthly for Lord of the Rings Online, so getting these extra premium housings isn't too much of an extra effort for me. I did spend a little bit of in real life money for some stuff, but to me that is important. I enjoy that, so I don't regret spending a little bit of in real life money to have my houses. Especially this one is my favorite one. This is my Rohan house. It is at the top of a mountain. I have my own tower and everything. It's huge. I've got so many decoration hooks. The house itself is huge. I also have one in Gondor. My Gondor house is a little bit smaller. It's not the large version of the Gondor house. I have the smaller version because you can get a small and a large version in Gondor, and I just have the small version, which is already really big. The housing in Gondor is enormous. And then also in Rohan, you can also have a mead hall, and I've always wanted my own mead hall, but they're all sold out, so I haven't been able to find my own mead hall yet. And I also know that those are crazy expensive to upkeep, so there's also that. But yeah, that's kind of like my little aside. So clearly, like, as you can see from all this, I love player housing with my 3 houses in Lord of the Rings Online. And the other thing with Lotro is housing is not at all tied to player power. Housing in Lotro is purely cosmetic. You do not need to ever have a house. The only advantage you get with having a player house is having extra storage. So you do get a house chest, and then you also get shared housing storage. So you can actually have a shared housing chest where you can view everything that is stored in all of your houses, and then you have a personal housing chest that is tied to just that house. So that's really the only advantage that you get in Lord of the Rings Online, is just an extra place to store your stuff. All of the decorations and all of the things that you see around my house are all cosmetic. They don't really do much. Some of them are really fun and cool. Like this keg, when I click on it, it will teleport me to a random place in Moria, which is just kind of fun to do sometimes. You end up in some really weird spots. There are also some minor achievements, like you see these maps on the wall here. You do get an achievement for collecting all of the maps, but again, that it is just an achievement, so that's really good for achievement hunters, etc. I've gone on long enough about Lord of the Rings Online. Let's talk about another game that I have done player housing in, and a game that approaches it in a completely different way. All right, we're going to talk about RuneScape player housing. So I do play both RuneScape 3 and old school RuneScape, but for the purpose of this video, I am pretty much only going to be discussing RuneScape 3 player housing. I haven't done much with old school, but I don't think it's too different. I think they're kind of the same. If any more hardcore old school RuneScape players want to correct me in the comments, feel free. But yeah, I'm mostly, for the purpose of this video, going to be talking about RuneScape 3 housing because that is where my housing is the most advanced. In RuneScape, instead of neighborhoods like Lord of the Rings Online, where you have all these different places and you have neighbors and you have all these other houses and these vendors, RuneScape is a single instanced area where you go through a portal and then your house is just there. It's on its own, it's by itself. And the unique thing about RuneScape is this house is 100% customizable to your own specifications. So you actually build your house in RuneScape from the ground up. And RuneScape actually ties your housing to player power in the fact that you need your construction skill. So I have 99 construction, so I can pretty much build whatever I want. Starting off, when you're a low construction level, you can pretty much only have like one room. You're limited to how many rooms you can have, what types of rooms you can have, the type of furniture. All of this is tied to the construction skill. And the construction skill is largely tied to player housing, but you do use it for some other things outside of just housing. There are certain quests where you need a construction level, and construction is considered one of those skills that just helps support other things. So yes, player housing in RuneScape is tied to player power. It's not going to help you really fight any bosses or anything. It's not anything like that, but RuneScape is one of those games that, unlike World of Warcraft, is really focused a lot. Like, you can kind of go either direction on RuneScape. It's totally customizable. You have all these skills. You can either go combat or skilling or both. There's no classes in RuneScape. It's completely customizable. So that's the way that construction is tied to player power. Another way that construction and player housing is tied to player power in RuneScape is specifically the prayer skill. Pretty much the best way to level your prayer skill in RuneScape is via the player altar. And the higher construction level you have, the better altar that you can build, and the higher amount of XP gain you will have from that. And the prayer skill is tied to combat. You generally need a high prayer level if you want to go do higher level, mid to high level bossing. You pretty much need prayer. But I will say that the altar is not necessary to level your prayer, but if you are not leveling your prayer via the altars, your leveling will go very, very slow. The nice thing about player altars is you can use a friend's altar. So if you have a friend in RuneScape that has like a max level altar and you have a very low construction level, you can go to their house and you can train at their altar if you have friends in RuneScape. As far as customizing your house, again, you can build it however you want. You can also customize the exterior and like the material that your house is made out of. So you can have stone, you can have different types of wood, you can have all sorts of different things. It does cost you some money to do that, and also construction in RuneScape is a huge gold sink. Construction is considered a very expensive skill to train, so that is also another way that player housing is kind of a gold sink, is because no matter what, if you want to train your construction, you have to spend money. So that is also another thing. But I do like the housing in RuneScape because, yes, a lot of it is involved with skills, but there's also just fun little things you can do. There's little mini games that you can do in your house. You can store your cosmetics there. You can have different butlers. Like, I have a demon butler, for example, and there's all sorts of varieties of servants that you can have in your house that will help you. They'll make food for you. They will run things to the bank for you. They do all sorts of fun, cool stuff. So... And lastly, again, like I mentioned earlier in the video, Final Fantasy XIV takes a similar approach to Lord of the Rings Online. But again, I know that there are some things that are probably different. I only ever visited friends' houses in Final Fantasy XIV, and it did seem to be similar to Lotro, where neighborhoods, you can customize your furniture and you can have all sorts of different things in your house, and you can kind of customize your house the way you want it, that it is a set house that you just hang decoration hooks in and all that other sort of stuff. So now let's talk about World of Warcraft and housing. So I'm gonna start off with talking about players' opinions about player housing, and then we're gonna kind of finish off with garrisons and why garrisons are not player housing. So we'll talk a little bit about that as well. When housing was first announced, I did notice a huge mixed reaction from the player base. It seemed largely positive. It seems most people are excited for this and most are looking forward to this. However, I did notice that there was also a large number of people who were upset about this, or people who were just saying things like, what is the point? Why do this? This is dumb, etc. And so I just want to say that I think the people that are saying that it's dumb or it's useless, in my opinion, and I know this is not the case for 100% of those people, those are kind of like the more hardcore end of the player base. These are the people that are mythic raiding, that are doing like crazy high level keys, that are the super serious hardcore WoW players. And I know this is not always the case, because I do know some mythic raiders who are also very excited for player housing, and they're still excited about this. So I know that's not the case for everyone, but I will say I think the majority of people that are not excited for player housing are the folks that are very hardcore, kind of living in this hardcore WoW gaming silo, and they don't see the point, because how is it going to help them achieve cutting edge? How is it going to help them achieve, you know, KSH or whatever? So even though I'm a person who does KSH, but we'll get into that later. And again, that's not always the case. I know there's tons of hardcore players out there who are also excited for this, but I think, in my opinion, that is the majority of people who are questioning this and saying there's no point. However, I do know that the casual players, the mount hunters, the transmog hunters, the achievement hunters, I know that most of them are going to love this. Obviously not everyone, there's always an exception, but probably most of the casual players and the players that like to do all of the cosmetic stuff are probably super excited for this. Where I fall is kind of somewhere in between. I do heroic raid, I don't do mythic raiding, and I get KSM pretty much every season. I do have one keystone hero under my belt, which I never thought I would achieve in my life, but I do some of the more higher, I'm not going to say high end because I don't do the highest end, I'm not cutting edge or anything, but I do some of the higher end stuff that people do, such as AOTC and KSM and whatever. So, but I am also excited for this because while I enjoy the more challenging aspect of World of Warcraft, I do also enjoy mount hunting, I do enjoy transmog hunting, I do enjoy achievement hunting, so I kind of enjoy both aspects of that. So I am excited for player housing in World of Warcraft. There are a ton of races in World of Warcraft. I wouldn't be surprised if player housing started off with just a handful of areas in World of Warcraft, because trying to make housing for every single race right out of the gate, I think, is going to be really hard. So I think a lot of us WoW players are going to have to manage our expectations on that they're probably not going to have housing available that's custom to every single race at first, just because there are so many in WoW. I think either what's going to happen is Blizzard is just going to do, again, this is all speculation, this is just my own speculation, it'll either be like kind of one standard looking housing area and then they'll expand on it later, or one thing that they could do to ensure that it is totally customizable to each character is maybe they'll take a RuneScape approach to it. Maybe they'll make like a housing portal and then you port in and then it's just your house there, but then you can customize that to your race or your class or whatever. Like, for example, I'm a demon hunter. If they had like a fell housing option, that would be really cool. So I think Blizzard could kind of go either way, where they have like different neighborhoods in the different zones and you would just go to that zone to go to your house, or it would just be a singular instanced house where you port in, it's just your house there, but then you can customize the exterior, you can customize the land it's in. So I think it could kind of go either way. Due to the amount of races and classes that are in World of Warcraft, I really think having like a single house that you can completely customize to however you want would be the way to go. Neighborhoods are really cool and I really do enjoy them in Lord of the Rings Online, but Lotro really has a limited amount of races. You know, you've got your elf, man, dwarf, hobbit, and those are pretty much like the 4 races. Like, yes, they have introduced like high elf and whatever, but they're still basically like the same. So neighborhoods works really well for Lord of the Rings Online because the races are so limited. Whereas like in World of Warcraft, there's so much variety to the land. There is so much variety to Azeroth that I really think a single instanced house that you can customize however you want would be the way to go, in my opinion. If you are a Blood Elf mage, for example, you might want your housing to look like Silvermoon City. Or maybe you want your housing to look very Horde-ish to show that you're a part of the Horde. Or maybe you want to go somewhere totally different and you want it to look like just a crazy mage castle or something like that. So there are so many different things that are tied to your character in World of Warcraft. Some people identify the most with their race, some people identify the most with their class, and some people just love certain environments. Like, for example, this one is a really popular one, and I know I'm gonna sound really cliche, but Nagrand in Burning Crusade, I know so many people love that area, myself included. If I could have a house that was in Nagrand, Burning Crusade, I don't care what race or class I am, that's what I would want my house to look like. So yeah, there are so many things that people love in World of Warcraft that are so different and so varied. I really do think a singular instance house that you can customize however you want instead of being locked into a certain neighborhood would probably be the way to go. So that is just how I personally think that Blizzard should do player housing. I invite you to please share in the comments how you think they should do it. Should they do neighborhoods like Lord of the Rings Online, or should they do a singular instance house like RuneScape, not tied to player power, but a singular instance house that you can literally customize to however you want? Let me know in the comments below what you feel Blizzard should do. Now, finally, we've gotten to the last part of our video, which is garrisons are not housing. Okay, I cannot say this enough. Garrisons are not housing. In my opinion, the people that have been commenting saying, we don't need player housing, garrisons are player housing, are the same people who don't want player housing. They just want to kind of push garrisons off onto those of us who want to be like, look, you have this is good enough, just take that, it's fine. No, that's not good enough for those of us who want player housing. So I didn't start playing World of Warcraft until 2020, so I never really played through Warlords of Draenor. However, when I was leveling a character, I did mess around a little bit with the garrison. And even that little bit of messing around with, I did not enjoy it. I didn't think it was that customizable. I didn't view it as player housing at all. So I actually pulled a few comments from the Warcraft forums, people who can better explain why garrisons are not player housing. So here are some of the comments. Okay, so this comment says, garrisons have never been stated by Blizzard to be comparable to player housing. They even went out of their way in descriptions to make sure that it is not considered player housing. It's not a place people can really call home. It's not on our planet. It's not even in our timeline. Player housing is a permanent feature throughout every expansion. There's more than just put a statue here or put a banner there for decorating. Garrisons were meant to be a temporary staging ground for an army that was never meant to be permanent, personalized, or home. I think those are some great points. Yes, garrisons are a dead feature, whereas player housing is always going to be evergreen. It's always there, it's always relevant. You can always put your new trophies in there, and as they release updates, they will probably release more customizations, etc. Whereas garrisons are now a dead feature. This one's pretty simple, and I like this one. Can you rearrange furniture? Can you plant trees? Can you decorate? Is it relaxing after a hard work? Does it have a home feel to it? No? Then it isn't player housing. Very simple and to the point. Why do people keep saying garrisons aren't player housing? Because they're garrisons and not player housing. What does a garrison mean? Here's the literal definition. Garrison is defined as to provide or occupy with troops. An example of garrison is to send army troops to an area in need, a fortified place with troops, guns, etc. So yes, garrisons were literally a place for staging military. They're not player housing. Here's one. I don't call it home. I can't really customize it outside of a few decorations. The only beds are in the inn. It's a fort for military use, not housing. All right, and here's one that I was really excited to see because I have not explored Final Fantasy XIV a whole lot. So let's read this player's comment comparing it to Final Fantasy XIV. Have you seen the housing estates in Final Fantasy XIV? There are many different styles of houses and sizes, not one faction-based model for everyone. You can see all those houses and wander amongst them like you could walk through a suburb in real life. The yards and interiors are highly customizable, unlike Garrisons, and their purpose is player housing, not a base containing an auction house, bank, trade buildings, etc. They are also completely optional, not a compulsory part of the expansion, and they continue to remain relevant as housing regardless of expansions ending and new ones beginning. Okay, this one is kind of broken up into two parts, but it does mention Final Fantasy XIV again. When people talk about player housing, they probably want something like in The Sims or Animal Crossing or Minecraft or MMORPGs like Final Fantasy XIV. Garrisons had very few customization options other than which monument do you want to put down, on which of the 2 or 3 fixed locations do you want to build this building on, etc. If you think a garrison is a house, show me your bedroom and a bed, armchair or couch. With all those buildings, there isn't anywhere to sleep or relax, only a trophy display area. Garrisons were rubbish. Okay, that's just their opinion that garrisons were rubbish. I'm sure there's lots of people who love garrisons and will simultaneously love player housing. So, you know, that is just an opinion. So that wraps up the final part of my video of why garrisons are not housing. They're not cozy. They are not a place where your character just goes to relax. They are a dead feature. So yes, garrisons are not housing, and I just outlined all of the reasons why. So that kind of wraps up my video. Please let me know in the comments below what you think about this whole World of Warcraft player housing thing, how you would like to see them implement player housing, and let me know if you have done player housing in a previous MMO and what you liked and disliked about it. Anyway, thanks everyone for watching. You can find me on these socials over here. I do stream on Twitch once or twice a week, so be sure to catch me live there sometime. And I will see you all in the next video. Bye.